Hello, it's Lynn Watts here with Wyatt the Winter Dog Books. And today I want to talk about helping children get a proper perspective on failure and success. As always, if you would like this video and subscribe, that would not only help me out, but I think it would help you out because you would get notifications of each new video that I post. So that would be very helpful. So let's get started. I just want to say, first of all, that we really owe, I think, a big debt to Carol Dweck, who actually came up with this idea of growth mindset. And through that idea or that concept, she got us more focused on the role that failure plays in success. It seems to me that, at least in terms of my early life, there was a lot of talk about success and being successful, but not very much on failure and what an important role that plays in our lives in every kind of way, but especially in terms of success. So I just want to, say, if you've not looked into her work, I think it's definitely something worthwhile of understanding a lot of her studies. Many, if not most of them, were done with students at school. So it's very applicable. So let's start out with one of the first messages that I think we need to get across when we talk about failure and success. And the first one is that failure is not permanent unless, of course, you quit, unless that's where you live. All right. So failure is something that we can or that we will certainly experience, all of us in life. I don't think there's anybody who doesn't experience failure in some way, but we don't have to stay there. We don't have to live there. Failure doesn't make us a loser or a failure. It doesn't identify, it's not an identity. It doesn't identify who we are, where we are. It can become something like that if we allow it to. And I think that's the important part right there. So it doesn't mean give up. It might actually mean, as Thomas Edison said, something to the effect, I haven't failed to find, how to create a light bulb. I've just found, and I forget the number, about 100 different ways not to make one. So it can be very instructive, but it doesn't have to be the end. Secondly, I think it's important to recognize and help students recognize that failure is often a stepping stone to success. So no matter what it is that you're trying to learn or accomplish or what goal you've set, there is going to be some failure built in. If there is no failure, then maybe it wasn't really a goal anyway. Maybe it was something that you were already capable of doing, but not something that you had to learn to do. So no matter what it is, whether it's a physical activity, whether it's, an academic activity, there is generally some learning curve involved. And if we somehow allow students to have this idea that they can be immediately magically successful at everything that they do, then we are certainly setting them up for failure and a whole lot of frustration. On the other hand, if we help them understand that failure is built into everything that we learn, and that is part of how we learn, then I think we set them up for a much better pathway to success. So success often begins with failure. The other piece of it is that success takes a lot of work to accomplish, but it also takes a lot of work to maintain. So again, whatever goal a child is set, then once they accomplishment, it's certainly a cause for celebration, but it's not a cause for, sitting back and letting nature take its course, because in many ways we can't maintain that goal unless we continue to work at it and set perhaps a bigger goal and then begin working toward that. So there is not really a point where you can just coast unless you want to let that goal go. So success takes work, and then it takes more work, is the third concept. Um, I think it's important also to recognize that success and failure are important, not just in setting goals, which we often talk about it in terms, but also in terms of relationships. That probably every relationship has some aspect in it of failure, where that the other person fails to meet our expectations, where we don't communicate well, we don't interact well, where things don't go well. And if we expect that magically every relationship is going to be successful without some failure and learning component to it, then we're setting ourselves up for great disappointment. So, no matter where you're setting a goal, whether it's to have a positive relationship with someone, or whether it is academic, physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever your goal is, there are going to be some setbacks and some moving forward. And I think recognizing the flow of accomplishment is very important. So, success and failure apply both to goal setting and to relationships. I think it's important to help kids know what to do after failure. All right. So it's not enough to just know, oh, well, it's going to happen. But what do you do with that? How can you make that productive and can be constructive? So, one thing certainly is to reflect on what happened, what happened, why it happened. A really key point that I think we need to especially teach to young kids today is to take responsibility for what happened, not blame someone else. So the fact that you didn't make a good grade on the test is not necessarily because the test was too hard, because the teacher didn't teach well, because the teacher doesn't like you, because the students in the classroom were too disruptive. All of those things might be a factor, but in the midst of all that, I think we need to teach students that they have to take responsibility for what happens in their own lives and then move on from there. I think third, it's always helpful to get some input from somebody who can help you digest, process what has happened when you fail. So find someone you trust to talk to. Always, and I used to do this all the time when working with students, we'd talk about a problem, let's say an interaction, a friendship problem that they were having in the school, a situation that didn't go well. We'd dissect it, figure out what they should have done, how they could do it differently. And then we'd always talk about what are you going to do next time? So I think helping students always anticipate that it's going to come back around. Whatever went wrong that time, you're going to have an opportunity to learn from this and then to apply what you've learned next time. So how will you do things differently? And then to identify those new strategies that you can do to try again. And the final thing that I think we need to recognize and to help students recognize that adversity actually builds strength. So that those of us who have never experienced, anything but success, who haven't run into failure, who perhaps have some magical lives. I personally don't know anyone like this, but I do know that there are some times where adults in a child's life engineer almost everything to be successful for them, rather than having them feel the effects of not having being successful at something, or not trying something and failing, or whatever that looks like. Those are people who don't gain the strength to handle adversity. So resilience comes out of failure. It comes out of hard times. It doesn't come out of a golden kind of lifestyle or life. So helping students realize that because they have failed, they are going to be stronger the next time around. And what have they learned from it, and how are they going to put that into practice? I think it's a really important concept. So those are 6 different things, different concepts that I think that are important for students to learn about in terms of being successful, and that failure is a stepping stone to success. As always, I hope this was helpful in the very important work that you do with young children. And thanks so much for listening.